Do you like reading? Well, if I had to say, I would consider myself as an avid reader of thriller novels and many other different genres, as long as it is a captivating read for me. Not to mention, my friends and I also exchange books with one another, so reading is not only an excellent stress reliever, but it also helps me in terms of facilitating social interactions as well as broadening my horizons. Do you like to read at home or in other places? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, being a voracious reader myself and also an introvert, I would always go for the option of enjoying a gripping book from the comfort of my own home. I often doze off after a heavy read without making this hobby of mine a nuisance because of the avoidance of deafening noises and the presence of others in public when staying indoors. In what place do you think it is difficult to read? Honestly, I can only speak for myself since it is a different case for everyone. As for me, I find reading in public places unbearable due to the constant disturbance in the form of loud and abrupt noises from people talking and vehicles moving on the road, to name but a few. On top of that, not being able to put my mind to finishing my book irritates me a lot. Do you like to read by yourself or with other people? As I've mentioned before, for someone with my personality, reading in solitude is right up my street, since I'm not that fond of company of other people because of the possible distractions. However, there is an exception to this rule, as it is compulsory for me to read with others when attending a book club or a book reading event. Describe a polite person you know. Well, when people ask me about a polite person I know, my older brother is the first one who springs to mind. The reason is quite simple. He's proven himself to be quite well mannered on so many occasions that I've basically lost count of it. By nature, he is a very forgiving person because rarely does he take mistakes seriously, and, in his opinion, anyone can make blunders from time to time, since we all have our own struggles in life. One occasion that demonstrated this tolerance was when he instructed me to solve a math problem that was a really tough nut to crack for me. To help me get to the root of the problem, he spent seemingly countless hours explaining it in great detail, and even made a lot of comprehensive notes about the key aspects that I had to take notice of in order to solve it. There were times when I had no clue what he was talking about, but signs of irritation were nowhere to be seen, and he simply carried on with his explanation. On top of that, he always offered words of encouragement, telling me that he'd been in my shoes before and knew how excruciating it was to admit one's own ignorance. Thanks to him, after a very long time, I managed to understand the ins and outs of how to solve that particular exercise. And I think that it is during times like this that he really shines as the image of a respectable older brother, as well as a great example for me to follow. What is the standard of being polite? Well, if you ask me, I believe that being polite is the equivalent of exhibiting consideration for others, as well as conducting yourself in a socially acceptable manner. The quintessential aspect of good manners for me is being mindful about how to say please or thank you in a genuine way, because I think those words are the foundation of politeness. Moreover, one should know how to create an appropriate atmosphere when conversing with other people. They should be able to put others at ease and be observant enough to recognize when to speak and when to listen in order to prevent awkwardness and ineffective communication. What behavior will be regarded as impolite? I can think of an area of behaviors that can be considered disrespectful in day-to-day life. A common example of this is queue jumping in public places. In these cases, the end result may range from petty squabbles to violent conflicts. However, our views of what is impolite and what is not also vary from culture to culture. In other words, one behavior may be perceived as respectful and polite in one culture, but this is not the case in another. For instance, crossing one's fingers is a common and innocent hand gesture in the US or the UK, but it is actually regarded as extremely offensive in Vietnam. Who's more polite? People from cities or those from the countryside? Well, being a city dweller myself, I believe that urban folks are more likely to be considered as well-mannered when compared to their rural counterparts. The reason behind this is that people living in cities are often taught codes of conduct and etiquette at a young age, which means that they are more inclined to be respectful towards others and know how to conduct themselves accordingly in public spaces. Conversely, the countryside often has lower population density, slower pace of life, and homogeneous population, meaning that social interactions vastly differ from those of city life. For instance, people living in the countryside may sometimes disregard others' privacy or even force others to listen to their opinions. As a result, they may be perceived as being inconsiderate or conservative, resulting in a stereotypical view that people in the countryside are all discourteous. What do you think makes people polite? Speaking from my own experience, I believe that there is no definite answer as the general perception of politeness stems from various factors. One's demeanor may be viewed as respectful and socially acceptable in one culture, but this may not be the case in a totally different cultural setting. Therefore, a one-size-fits-all answer cannot be given. However, one crucial thing everyone must take into consideration is that, regardless of our cultural background, being benevolent as well as attentive towards other people will always be synonymous with politeness.